Hi, I'm Edward Chang. I'm a neuromuscular massage therapist in the state of California, and today we're going to be talking about fascia. Now, fascia is a very tricky subject, and a lot of you probably don't know what it is. So let's go ahead and actually go over that first. It's a very, very important concept, and you do need to understand it. It is one of the most advertised techniques or specializations that is advertised within massage therapy profession, but there is some things that you do need to be very, very considerate of, and I think it's better that you know about that than not know about that because, yeah, going out there without that knowledge is going to be a little bit kind of bad on your part, and I'd prefer you to be safe. So let's go ahead and discuss about fascia first. Let's explain it, and then I'm going to go ahead and go over a little bit of the fad stuff that goes on with it. And then I'm actually going to go with the next video on a technique called cupping, and we'll discuss more about fascia in that video and a little bit about the diagnostic methods with cupping. May not be practiced in traditional Chinese medicine, but for me, I'm using both TCM and science. So, little interesting information in that video. But for now, let's just go ahead and explain fascia. So fascia is basically this. Let's pretend that this little piece of card is skin, and that my actual tissue, my actual body, is muscle tissue. And basically, the skin is now attached to my muscle tissue. So what fascia is basically this. It's this tape. It's a tape that's connecting the skin to the muscle tissue. So whenever you go into a cadaver lab and you actually cut someone open, you're going to notice that there's this little stringy stuff that's basically holding the skin to the muscle tissue. And that stuff is called fascia. This fascia surrounds the entire body and basically constricts the movement of the skin and the muscle tissue. Because you don't want your muscles to be moving around, inside of a suit of skin. That would be pretty bad, because then you'd just be slipping and sliding everywhere and you wouldn't have any control over your movement. And so fascia is basically there to help create movement, but at the same time, it's helping to restrict the amount of movement within your body. And that's the thing, is that sometimes we need to release the fascial tissue in order to go ahead and have your skin move freely over your joint. And that can also give you a return of range of motion. And that's what basically fascial tissue release is all about. Now there's been several techniques that have come out of this idea and this concept. Now, the original person who invented it was Ida Rolf. And then from her, quite a lot of stuff has happened. ART has come out from it, I believe, according to my teachers at massage school, but who knows. ART, and let me go ahead and anatomy trains, I think it's called anatomy trains. There's this other guy that made a technique out of it, and he basically has a school, and it's called like anatomy trains. But there's another technique that was made out of it, and there's so many of them. Oh my god, ads. Oh, it's $1,000 to take this course. Jesus, mother of Troy. Tom Myers has also created a technique out of this. I just want to look up his name so you'd be aware of it. So this fascial release stuff has been advertised for a very long time, and you do have to be careful with it because they will make a lot of claims. And it has been developed by a doctor, but remember, some doctors don't care. I had a person get into medical school who really didn't care about other people. It was dangerous too. He almost blew up the entire chemistry lab because there was this chemical that we were dealing with. It was hydrated, basically it had water with it, and the dangerous part was that if this chemical was dried out and there was no more water present, and it will dry out on its own, it will explode. So yeah, the instructor, repeated a couple of times, do not let this chemical dry out. 5, 10, 15 times, do not let this chemical dry out, the student is laughing his butt off and not really paying attention to his experiment or anything like that. And, he's always asking for help. He never really knew any of his basics. He's always asking for help with his chemical experiments and basically everything. And he makes it into medical school, and he almost blows up the entire lab, and we have to remind him, and the instructor actually had to go up to him and be like, and was basically panicking a little bit, and it was like, you gotta get that water right in there right now. And it was a very intense moment for the class, because it was just like, you almost blew up the entire lab. And this guy gets into medical school. So some of your doctors may not have critical thinking skills or be really accredited to go ahead and be a doctor, but they're doctors anyway. Think of Michael Jackson, his doctor. In case you don't know who he is, he's a very, very famous singer. But, just because they have a certification or license to do this doesn't mean necessarily that they should. And also, just because they have a license doesn't mean that they can't make mistakes as well. So there is that other side, and it does kind of balance each other out a little bit. And it is kind of hard to tell, the fine lines between, they just made a mistake, but they're a good physician, or, they just don't really care about people, and they, got in the profession anyway, and they don't make any mistakes just because they followed the book, and they're safe because they followed the book, and, all that. But, just because it's made by a physician doesn't mean anything. So there's a lot of false claims that do come with it. And one of the advertisement techniques, as we just discussed, is that it was made by a physician. So one of the false advertisements that they will make is that it basically corrects your posture. So let me go and show you something. This poster fell off my wall, but here we are. We have these joints, and there's these ligaments, and there's these bones. So whenever you're manipulating tissue, what they're going to go ahead and do in myofascial release techniques is they might go ahead and apply forces to your joints by basically applying force in two directions and basically trying to force the joint almost completely apart. And so what that does is basically loosens up these ligaments. Now these ligaments have a very low capability of putting itself back together once it's been stretched. It's like a rubber band. Once you stretch that rubber band to a certain point, it starts losing its elasticity. It's basically its ability to come back together. And they're loosening and stretching, and they're going like this to your muscle tissue, and they're going like that, and they're saying that they're releasing the fascia, but in reality, they may be loosening the ligaments. And that claim of their posture is something that they claim all the time. But if you go ahead and look at an x-ray, and I've talked to some chiropractors about this, the x-ray is going to reveal that the ligaments have been stretched and their posture has been corrected because the ligaments have been stretched, not because the fascia has been released. So there is a precaution that must be taken. Yes, it is very effective. Yes, it is very, very effective. But also, it can be very non-effective if done incorrectly. Now, you cannot see ligaments so much in an x-ray because it is a very, very, basically translucent material, and basically x-ray will go right through it. But you can see the difference between the joints, and it's not so much the muscular tissue, because you will see the outlines of the kind of the ligaments a little bit, and you'll be able to notice that it's not so much that the fascia was released, but the ligaments were stretched. So you do have to be careful, and I would caution you to be careful, because the claim will be out there that it will correct your posture and that you will feel better because of it. And yes, you will feel better. Yes, there will be increased range of motion, but they may have stretched the ligaments. So you do have to be careful. And just because it's being created by a doctor does not mean a thing. So do be careful. Because yes, it is effective. Yes, the tape is there and it's restricting your movement. So you do have to loosen up that tape to go ahead and restore some movement. Because sometimes when that tissue forms, it hangs on very tightly and restricts all movement. So you do have to be careful. So hopefully you learned a little bit from here. And I do hopefully want to see you next time, basically. So there you go. Have fun!